Okay, so this has actually been a very rich engagement, even since we started. And I would just like to also share one or two thoughts as I respond to the question you asked on if there was emotional addiction, right? Now, I like to always see marriages and relationships like buildings, right? I know when people celebrate their anniversaries, that excitement is always there, and people are saying, "Oh, congratulations, congratulations!" Right? However, celebrating a milestone in a relationship is beyond the congratulations. It's the fact that two people, right, committed themselves together to build a home, to build a relationship. And so I liken it to a building. So the first year of the anniversary is like the first floor. The fifth year of the anniversary is like the fifth floor. The 25th year of the anniversary is like the 25th floor. And then they are building. Now, where does addition come in? So the materials that make a building to stand must be quality, must be genuine, must be original, right? Any counterfeit material will likely bring a collapse. And so when we see that homes are breaking or we see cracks in relationships, it points us back to something that could have, infiltrated in the building of the home. And this is where I see that our conversation is actually very needed on. And so sometimes I even like to use the word habit as against addiction. Habit seems to capture it a lot much more broader way. Because when you say addiction, some people just immediately zero out that, oh, I'm not addicted. But when you say habit, everybody knows that I have both good and both bad habits. Now, emotional addiction is one of those habits in the framework, like I would like to call it. Again, I think there was a question you were asking about the cost of addictions, and I'll just also wrap my thoughts around that. Now, if we see addictions as habits and their compulsive behaviors that sometimes somebody does and he does not even know that he has done it, then that actually means it's an habit that has been ingrained. So the first time the person does it, the second time, the fifth time, it became repetitive without the cognitive control of the person. Now, when we look at a home, there are a major touch points to a family, a relationship, and emotional is one of them. So there is the spiritual atmosphere and moral climate of a family, of a home. There's the health and the wellness of the members of the family. Now, the third one is now what you asked about, the fact that there is the emotional well-being. And so we see relationships today with a lot of strain in their emotional well-being because there have been negative habits that have developed over time. I'll give an example. One of them is the fact that there's poor communication. So if as a spouse I have poor communication, it's going to affect the emotional well-being of my relationship. And I heard Pastor Lawal and Timmy share strikingly of this, especially with technological addiction, which is a major one affecting this sphere. But there's another part of emotional addiction that most times is not commonly talked about. This talks about lack of time and attention. Lack of time and attention, right? I remember many years back, 3 years back, I was in this school. I was just mentoring the young people in the senior school. When I was done with my session, a girl walks to me and says, and she was actually crying and sobbing. And, I tried to comfort her to know, why are you crying? And she tells me a story that was very touching. She shares with me that, oh, well, every single morning, my dad beats me because I'm not doing well in maths at school. And then, out of compassion, I said, okay, so what about your mom? Because if dad is beating you, okay, what about mom? She said, mom is out of the country. And so you find out that this is a young girl in school, but then the habit of the spouses of not having quality time has also affected the child. And she's already also feeling the emotional baggage as transferred to her. So every member of the family is influenced by any habits, good or bad, that either of the spouses develop, and it's a concern and a big burden. So those are two primary values or habits that affect the emotional well-being I would like to talk about.
One question I would like to ask again is addiction actually a form of abuse to your spouse when it comes to marriage? Is it like an abuse when you have an addiction and of course it's affecting your spouse? Do you think it's another form of abuse?
Okay, so thank you, Blossom, for that. So every one of us, we have habits. Abuse is sort of an abnormal use, or when something becomes having a negative impact, right? Which is what bad habits do, addictions do, right? So every single one of us, we have good bad habits and we have not so good habits. Now, the victory or the awareness, like we call it, where it starts from is when, as a person, I begin to come to the consciousness of what are the habits I, you know, eventually do, or that I get to do as often, that is not good. And every one of us will have a blind spot. So as a person, I may not know the things that have become abusive for me. I may not know the things. If I yell at my spouse, I may not know as categorical as I may know enough. It might take that open communication, that dialogue, and that self-awareness, where I come to a point whereby, as couple, you can say, oh, well, quarterly or, bi-monthly, you want to sit down to rate or do a checkup of our relationship. How have we fared? And then in that open conversation, with no holds barred, without any judgment, I begin to find out that, oh, maybe my spouse brings up and tells me that this is an area that has been of a negative influence in our relationship. And then that is where the journey of freedom comes, or the journey of getting to be better. So every one person has that not so good habits we are trying to be better in, right? There's no perfect person, right? And so I believe strongly that it's about that open dialogue. It's about that intentionality to say, oh well, I want to consciously bring about restraint. I'll give an example. So when we talk about physical wellness, I think I had Pastor Lawa sharing about that, or the kind of diet the family eats and all that. So one major part of habits that affect relationships is stress. Now, stress is not totally induced as a person. It could be contextual, maybe based on the kind of work the person does and all that. So you find out that as simple as stress is, a couple is already affecting maybe the sex life of a couple, right? It's affecting their medical wholeness and their physical strength and wellness. And so, but until a choice, until one thing about building is that building has to be intentional. Both two parties of the relationship come to say, okay, let's see, fine, this is what we do. We come in late at this time. Okay, we set out this time. How can we ensure we have adequate rest? How can we balance our schedule to see that we still have enough adequate sex? How do we ensure that there's no loophole in our relationship? It comes from that place of intentionality that, hey, I want to make this work, and so that it doesn't get to a place of abuse whereby I'm now trying to do protection when I had an opportunity to do prevention. Prevention is the better guide that helps relationships. When a building collapses, it's collapsed already. I wrote a book, and my inspiration for that book was, I call it Fellows in a Ship. And now two people, a man and a woman, are in a relationship. Now, if those two people are not very conscious of how they are building the home, the ship may get to be may lead to a shipwreck. The relationship, which is the ship, can get to a point where is now remedial. We're not trying to see what can we do. But then the building has collapsed, but then the cracks are evident. And so two people in the relationship, and for most people, especially when the children get to a point of accountability, they are also part of the building, whereby they see mommy and daddy, they see the husband and wife, and they are modeling the values, the habits from them. As simple as it is, UNICEF calls this habit or value life skill education. So I saw my daddy so hardworking in his business, in his work, and that was an habit I picked without him telling me to go read my book or be hardworking. He taught me how to iron my clothes as a pre-teenager. He taught me how to dress properly, how to knot a tie, how to put on a good clothes. These are habits that, even though you don't have enough time as a parent to teach or warning your children, because you are living it, they are drawing it from you. So we are not waiting to a point when it gets to a point of abuse, but we are salvaging it ahead of time.
And also, I'll say thank you so much, Dr. Abraham, for joining us. You spit a lot of fire, despite just giving like 10 minutes. You said a whole lot that, in fact, they're in my two hands and I'm not letting them go. Thank you so much for joining via Zoom. And thank you, everyone, for joining. And of course, I hope my viewers, you enjoyed one or two and you learned a whole lot. And my name is Rose Blossom. You're welcome to Family and Values. Here we have another guest joining us, and we have Dr. Abraham Owoseni. He's a life and leadership coach and author, also an educational leader. Joining us live from Lagos. May we have you, Dr. Abraham?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Blossom, and everyone in the studio.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, Dr. Abraham. Okay, I'll just go with my question right now. So yes, Pastor Mike has been saying a whole lot, but I and Joy, we are not yet satisfied with the answer Pastor Mike gave us. Now we asked, why do men cheat? Yes, Joy has already said why women cheat, because emotional, we are not satisfied emotionally, the attention is not there, these little things that makes woman feel like a woman. You understand? She does not need to get it outside, but once she sees somebody, she's getting it already. I know you joined in the conversation already. Now we asked Pastor Mike, what makes a man cheat? And Pastor Mike said, okay, sometimes respect, and all of that. But we are not satisfied. Behind the camera before you came in, we're like, no, it can't just be respect, because I don't think respect is enough, which you already said that actually it's not enough excuse for a man to cheat. So yes, but I want to hear more. Why do men actually cheat? And in fact, if you want to go the line of beauty or anything, no, because sometimes when you look at the woman they are cheating on, even being smart or intelligent, they are not even compared to the wife at home. So what is the reason men cheat, please? Can you tell us?
I mean, that's a big symposium discussion. But then, okay, so let me approach it this way, and I must appreciate the contribution so far in this discourse. So one of the contributions I want to make right now cuts across both men and women. And last time when we were sharing around something like this, I did make a contribution that the home, the family, the marriage is like a building. And then you're building, and you get to the first floor, you get to the second floor, you get to the 10th floor, the 40th floor, and people are wishing you, oh, happy 40th anniversary, oh, happy 20th marital anniversary, and all of that. Now, the reason is this: if we look at it from that perspective, that a home, a family is a building, then we can understand the reasons why the likes of infidelity could play in. And I'm going to walk us through this analogy. So when you look at it physically, when a person is to build a property, a house, right? After the design is done and all of that, he gets an approval from the government. He gets, a development permit, a licensing to start building. And so that in marriage is like the wedding day. So you get an approval, right? Certified to build. And think about it. Everyone gets that approval, and then you start building. As you start building, the pitfall now happens because most people stop the building on the wedding day. But invariably, the building is supposed to start on the wedding day. Did you see that now? So we expect that all through the period of courtship, you have built the foundation, right? If that is so, then now the union has been consummated, then start building. So you find that one of the pitfalls for, issues of cracks in homes, as I would like to call it, it's not even about the crack when it happened. It was just the fact that in the foundation, in the period of courtship, because I want us to see this in a more preventive measure so that this can bring a lot of value to more people, especially young people going into marriage, right? So the period of courtship is not just the period of going to the best eateries to eat, to smile, to put on good colognes and smell well. The period of courtship is the foundation laying period of the home. It's that period where you are dealing out on different thematic issues and trying to get the same belief on it. I tried checking the dictionary meaning of infidelity, and I found that one of the things it said was variance in beliefs, right? And then which now leads to maybe parting ways or issues of cheating and all that. So you find that as that foundation laying process, we want to ensure we're on the same level. And then at the commencement of the union, aka wedding day, then we start building. We are building together. However, should we see a crack, we don't need to wait and leave the crack open. You see the little gaps in communication, you see the little frictions, for a week. oh, communication is not like before. You see that, oh, the attention your spouse gives to you is not like before. You see that all the things you were doing before was not coming. That is seemingly examples of cracks. And if you see that in a typical building, what do? You start to address it on time. So when we look at it this perspective, we see that a union can prevent that from happening if we begin to treat the cracks ahead of time. We don't want to wait to a time when the union finally comes down crumbling. No. So we are treating the cracks. I remember one time growing up, my parents once lived in a house where the landlord every end of the year, just around this time, close to Christmas, the landlord invests in maintaining the house. It paints everywhere. It does a lot of maintenance work. This talks about the same understanding comes to our union, that before even the touch of infidelity, what can I do to maintain my home? I'll give you a few. Number one, I must think about it. I must have a schedule for maintenance. It could be relative to every union, vis-a-vis the the context around the home and what's available. It could be a timeout. It could be, just attention where we get to have a time where we want to communicate some more, right? It could be that they will now need to create a budget for maintenance. Maintenance needs budgeting, and I learned that, I heard a lot of conversation around that. It could also be that creativity of maintenance. So, I have you Blossom sharing that, women don't want to keep saying to men what they should do, right? Exactly. So creativity comes in maintenance. So maintenance doesn't just come by doing the facade treatment, painting the buildings alone and the walls. What else that way can I maintain the union? Especially surprises. Gary Chapman did a lot of work in his groundbreaking work, The 5 Love Languages. Which one is the two topmost of your spouse? You're trying to give that. If it's quality time and attention, if it's gift, if it's act of service, you're trying to give as much as you can. We don't need to wait till the cracks showing up. We actually don't want to see the cracks showing up. So we are trying to spoil ourselves enough to ensure that we don't allow the cracks to show up, and it doesn't come to a point of deficit where we're not trying to make remedial. It's almost very difficult when those happen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Because of our time, I'll ask you one question before we let you go. The question is, can cheating be an addiction eventually? Can it be an addiction that, you have to start treatment, you understand? Not just you sitting down, let's talk about it. It has to be as a conscious treatment whereby you probably need a psychologist, you probably need somebody that you need to speak to, like a shrink.
Beautiful.
Do you think that?
Beautiful. I mean, awesome. Thank you, Blossom, for that, right? So it can be, one can evolve, right? There could be mistakes along on the way, but one can always evolve. One of the ways of evolution and transformation and metamorphosis as a married man, as an unmarried person, preparing for marriage, as a family person, even as grandparents, is to always be open to knowledge. You see, one thing, I found about some spouses is that, we just assume a lot because, I've been living with this person for so and so years, so I know the person, but that's not true. So there's one book I have, somewhere, in my shelf I want to read maybe during this period. This is a book called If Needs Are Needs by William Harvey. If Needs Are Needs, building an affair-proof home. Now that book was emphasizing how couples can build an affair-proof home. Now, so for a person, if a person chooses to invest in knowledge, he can build an affair-proof home. Now, for a person perhaps who is already involved in that, he can make a U-turn. I mean, and I love this every time I drive on the highway. I've not seen any driveway that doesn't have a U-turn. No matter how far you have gone on the wrong path, you can always choose to make a U-turn. The day you choose to make a U-turn, it's that day the changes come. The day you pick the phone to make a call to your spouse and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." All of those single acts, those are days of the change and transformation involved. So it can, I wouldn't say it can become an addiction. I would rather say that one can transform from a erring path to the right path, because that is actually what God wants, the creator of marriage. He wants a union whereby he created marriage as a twin engine. Not an engine, not a union that will run on one engine. He wants two engines. And he was very intentional about the creation. So he wants the two people to continually improve in their learning. And if there's any gap we have found, communication. Communication, that's the point that, as we reiterated again and again, communication. So you can take time out, you can ask, no assumption. Or you can ask, the way you spoke to me, we've not had sex for a month. Communication opens things up, and it's that gap, it mends the gap so that there's no crack in the union and the union does not fall eventually.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Abraham Owoseni, for that one. That was beautiful. So, and thank you, Dr. Abraham Owoseni, for joining us from Lagos State. Thank you very much for your input. I really learned a lot. And sometimes Dr. Abraham will say, you didn't give me enough time. You didn't give me enough time.
It's always not enough time. It's always not enough.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, my viewers, also for joining. Tomorrow, we'll still be talking about relationship and marriage, and of course, the best way to go about it on family and values. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same host, of course, different guests. Till tomorrow, have a beautiful day and bye for now.